I'll put it this way. So we saw in a lot of news about Taylor Lorenz. You know Taylor Lorenz?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know Taylor Lorenz, Mary?
Know of her. Heard of her.
So she recently got demoted because she publishes fake news about a couple YouTubers. Now, people aren't really, they're not calling it a demotion. They're saying she was moved from the features team to the tech team, but now she's being called a tech reporter. So if you're writing feature opinion columns and now you're just reporting on tech, that's a demotion.
Sure.
But, she gets featured on MSNBC because of mean tweets. Yeah, we've been swatted 8 times. We've had the bomb squad show up. We've had credible threats, and my private properties unaffiliated with this show, with tenants in them, have also been swatted. And look, I'll say it. I guess it's kind of weird talking about myself in this way, as if I'm deserving of attention or whatever. But a lot of people pointed out, hey, like when one of the biggest political shows is getting this much threats and swatting and bomb threats and stuff, isn't that a big news story? But for some reason, we don't crack the news at all. And I'm like, this is exactly what you should understand. When people threaten us with death, when we have to evacuate our studio for 3 hours over a credible threat, it is not newsworthy to the establishment. When one reporter for the mainstream media gets mean tweets and cries, they bring her on TV and they parade her around.
Yep.
Because we are not a part of the establishment. So
do you think it might have to do with her just being a woman and women's grievances?
Maybe a little bit.
Being seen as more important?
But I think, look, CNN got bomb threats and they evacuated, and it was like the biggest news everywhere. I mean, even Fox News doesn't cover what's happening here. We don't matter to that world, right, even though we rival the viewership in terms of the key demographic for many of these cable shows. In fact, we beat CNN in key demo viewership in prime time. So when I look at something like that, when I look at the crimes committed against us, it's not just the media ignoring it. It's the question of, people were posting this. How is it that Timcast has been swatted 8 times, received 2 credible threats, and has had, that's just here. We've also had other properties swatted that people don't know about. They're like, why haven't the feds caught these people? And I'm like, it's a good question, isn't it? It's a real good question. I mean, why haven't they arrested the protesters that are going to Kavanaugh's or Coney Barrett's house?
Right. Well, the better question is, why don't they care?
Right.
And I don't think that they care. And I think that it's a little bit related to this news story with the Texas Republicans declaring the election illegitimate. And we may not agree with why they're doing it, but I'm a little bit sympathetic to their angst, because they feel like everything that they care about, everything that matters to them, does not matter to the people in charge.
Exactly. This is exactly what was happening prior to the first Civil War.
Yep.
Southern states, not a fan of them, but they were saying, why isn't the law being upheld as we agreed to it? Why was the North allowed to ignore the law and the South wasn't?
Right.
So they said, later. I don't know what's going to happen, man, but I know reading about John Brown is really fascinating stuff. This dude, look, it's crazy because he was an abolitionist. And he would often talk about the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal, the Golden Rule, and all these things I completely agree with. But he was also, he walked up to a dude and you shot him in the face. And a lot of people called him a madman. They said he was insane. He was a psychopath. You gotta imagine what would happen right now if some dude, like, making the same statements as John Brown committed one of these acts. The funny thing is, the left that props him up as a hero would denounce him immediately.
Yeah. Because
he was about freedom, liberty, and the Declaration of Independence.
You got to change the language on that one. You have to.
They couldn't support that. A bit. But yeah, basically, Texas filed a lawsuit. Let me pull it up actually. Texas filed a lawsuit, Texas v. Pennsylvania, in 2020, filed by the state Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Blah, 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 blah. They said, they alleged that Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin violated the U.S. Constitution by changing election procedures through non-legislative means. The Supreme Court said, screw off.
Not a good way to go.
So what happens if you say, I believe this was unconstitutional, and instead of actually getting that sit down and that adjudication, you're told, go away, we won't hear what you have to say. Texas then goes and says, okay, our mind has never been changed. We continue to believe these things. And you know what really frustrates me is the cowardice of the Supreme Court and the media, because they were too stupid and cowardly to realize there are more elections coming. And if Texas says we believe it's unconstitutional and you say we don't care, Then they're going to say, okay, then what happens come 2022? In the midterms, they're going to be like, we don't believe any of this is legitimate,
Right.
which is literally what they're doing. What happens if in 2024 Biden actually wins again? I don't see it as being possible, to be honest. But let's say he doesn't run. Let's say some Democrat, Eric Adams or Gavin Newsom runs and then wins. And Texas just goes, don't know, don't care. And this time they don't certify the election.
So it could go two different ways, and I think there's a little bit of a scale as to how that could play out, right? They literally just go and do their own thing. They just start ignoring the federal government. Probably still sending in taxes, taking tax revenue in, but everything else, they're just not acknowledging it. And the other thing that could happen is that things could get violent, or they could get incredibly violent. And I think a lot of that is going to depend in large part on the response of the federal government and how violent they want to get with people who are trying to basically peacefully secede. And I say peacefully secede. I haven't seen it yet, so that's got a little asterisk by it, because we'll see whether or not it's peaceful.
The first Civil War was peaceful for 2 months, 3 months.
Right.
And that's the issue. People think that peaceful divorce is possible, but I don't think it is.
Why do you think it's not peaceful? Or what possible?
So the first Civil War, you had, I think, 7 states. I could be wrong. But they seceded. They made a declaration, and that was it. For several months, nothing happened. Abraham Lincoln then gets inaugurated and says, nope, those military bases are ours.
There you go.
So what happens is you've got federal authorities, federal law enforcement officers, and if a state secedes and then tells the FBI, the CIA, DHS, get out, and they say no, it can't be peaceful.
That's going to be a real problem.
That's the issue. And it's what's fascinating is what Ulysses S. Grant wrote about it. He said that every state has a right to secede.
Right.
It just means that you will go to war, and if you lose, you will live under the rules of your betters or whatever he said, your captors or whatever. So his idea was, you look at the American Revolution, you have a right to say, I have a right to autonomy and to secede, and you can try. If you lose, you now live under the rules of those who have defeated you. And then his argument was the Union sacrificed blood and treasure to admit these states into the Union. And there was a debt owed to the Union that if they were to leave, it would be like them being given free stuff and then ripping them off. And so that's why they went to war.
See, this is part of my problem with government, is not everybody signed that contract. No, not everybody agreed. Plenty of people were born after the fact. Plenty of people didn't have, especially in that age, they don't have social media. They're not reading up. They don't know. They come into this world. They're just trying to survive and prosper with their families. Maybe one good hope for us with any coming civil war would be that it would be a very slow withdrawal and slow pullout.
I think it would be 10 times faster.
Could be.
Because of the internet and social media.
The information age.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that, man, I mentioned this in a couple segments earlier. I was watching Avengers Infinity War, which was, I think, 2018, right? 2018?
Yeah.
You should know that. And, well, you're the pop culture person. So, but I was thinking about, like, what I was doing when this movie came out. And I was like, do we not realize how much the water has started to boil in the past 4 years?
Yeah.
So I was thinking about how people kept telling me since 2018 there was never going to be a civil war, and I was crazy. Even today, people tell me there's not going to be a civil war. And then when I saw the story about Texas and pulled up Texas v. Pennsylvania, and I'm just reading this lawsuit, I was like, this is how frogs boil in a pot. Yeah. You can look at Texas v. Pennsylvania and see that you had, I think, 22 states versus 22 states suing each other over whether or not the election was constitutional. You had members of Congress refusing to certify. You had state legislatures sending alternate electors. And then you had January 6th, and there are still people acting like nothing's happening. And I'm just like, well, man.
I don't think that there's going to be a civil war. I don't think it's even possible. I think because any war that we get entangled in is global at this point, and it's not going to be on American soil. It's going to be all over the world, including on American soil. But something is definitely happening. I just don't think it's leading to it. I take the authoritarian bet, like Abe Lincoln, that we cannot shovel this union. This union is secure. The only reason we're able to have this conversation is because of this union. If the union shatters, we're all doomed, essentially. Like, you think nuclear war is a problem, well, count your blessings that you haven't watched a nuke go off.
What do you think? Do you think there are any parallels that can be drawn between what we're seeing right now with the encroaching totalitarianism and the collapse of the Soviet Union? because that thing fell apart.
Yeah.
And people didn't have to go out and fight and have streets filled with blood.
Yeah, it was that the oligarchs wanted to seize control. I think that's a big part of why the Soviet Union fell. It was like orchestrated by the oligarchy in Russia to seize power. And I can see that happening here. It seems they seem to want to, but it's foreign oligarchs that are trying to do it.
I think the difference is, though, with the Soviet Union, you had different countries. You had people who spoke different languages. You had people who were outright effectively captured in the past few decades. The Soviet Union only lasted, 69 years?
Yeah.
So you effectively have Russia just annexing other countries. And so what happens when you have imagine if Texas only spoke French and, Alabama only spoke Spanish. Well, then I can understand a collapse because there's already a language barrier. Although the closer you get to the border, the more people speak each other's language. This is the United States. It's 250 plus years. So this is, everybody speaks English. We have a lot of shared history, a lot of shared values. Now it's starting to be ripped apart by these two different factions. You have the constitutional republic, which is people who are American. And then you have the multicultural democracy. And I suppose Alex Jones would call it the nationalists and the globalists is one way to put it.
Yeah. The Bank for International Settlements, the bankers, the Swiss bankers, the World Economic Forum's involved, BlackRock trying to buy American land out from, it's actually Blackstone is buying a lot of land, and BlackRock will tell you that that's conspiracy if you say it's BlackRock because it's Blackstone, even though they were kind of spin-offs of each other, or one spun off from the other.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.